Okay, welcome back. So we have colored in our palm fronds. I think that's how you say it. I'm sure someone will tell me below if I got it wrong, but we colored those in, and all we used was beach green and felt green to create that. And I feel like it could use a little bit more depth myself. If you like how yours look just using those two colors, you can leave it that way. I'm actually going to take Ionian green and add just a little bit more darkness to mine, and I think that will really change up a few things. So I'm only adding this in our shadow areas, and everything is dry. Because I've already activated all the pencil before, nothing's going to reactivate. So that's the great thing about Inktense, is of course that you can layer them, and you can layer them, when they're dry, you go over them with a different color, or you can put all your layers down and blend them out. But in this case, I just wasn't sure how dark I wanted certain areas to be until after I used those two colors. Now, if you don't want to add a third layer of color, you can just skip this part of the color along. Just hang out for a second while I do that. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to show you guys how you can layer if you feel it's not dark enough. But I just wanted a little bit more darkness, some of these spots. One thing is, compared to alcohol marker and water, so when you use water, they almost have a rough feel to them, the finish on your pencils, whereas when you use alcohol marker, they're really smooth. It's really interesting to go between the two different ways of blending them out. There's nothing wrong with the, using water though. And that is the preferred way, of course. You get more depth of color, you can move it around more. But when you're new to Inktense, sometimes it's better to, use something like an alcohol marker, just so you can play with the colors and see how they work, see how you can drag them, see how they blend. And you're not sitting there trying to also fuss over, do I have enough water on my brush? Do I have too much water on my brush? Kind of takes a little bit of the pressure away. That's why I feel this is the best way to start with your Inktense. And you can still get a very pretty picture. And then just, graduate into the water brush later once you feel more in control of the colors and you know how they work and look. Because obviously, these colors look way different than my swatch chart, because my swatch chart was done with water, whereas I'm using alcohol ink. And again, you can use any colorless blender. It doesn't have to even be alcohol based. You can use a water based one, like if you have a Tombow, or I know the Zig brand has those too, Zig markers. So any colorless blender works. I just happen to have an abundance of alcohol markers, colorless blenders, so that's why I'm using those, and it works out. Because this is ink. It is a water-soluble ink though, but just because it's water-soluble doesn't mean you have to use a water-based activator, I guess we'll call it. And like I said, it's a great way for me to use up all these colorless blenders that I never use. So that's kind of how I look at it. Yeah, I just want to add a little shadow, especially where the palms are folding in. Please do let me know in the comments below if you guys like more color alongs. Like I said, in the past, they just didn't get a lot of interest, so I started just doing short tutorials, but I actually don't mind coloring entire pages with you guys. I'm already coloring them anyways. as you know, if you watch my TBCs, like I already plan on coloring those, so I don't mind coloring it on camera with you guys. And this book is very affordable. It's not even, I don't even think it's $7. And I do like the Teresa Goodridge pages. While I do have a few others, most of my books from Creative Haven are Teresa Goodridge. I just love her artwork style. And you know what? She's actually like the coolest person ever. Like, if you post a picture that you've done for her on Instagram, she actually replies. And she'll like comment on it. She's the coolest artist in the world, and I love her stuff. You can also buy pages from her on her Etsy store as well. But yeah, most of my Creative Haven books are Teresa Goodridge. So see how I'm cleaning this off? Yeah, the tip is stained, but once it draws clear, you've cleaned it off. Okay, so I'm keeping all these colors out just so we stay organized. So for the palm tree whatevers, I got no words. I'm going to use a combination of, let's see, we used willow and oak up here. I'm actually going to do willow again, because it's really important when you pick colors for pages, you want to continue using similar colors throughout the page. Like, so I used willow and oak up here. I need to use it elsewhere. It helps bring balance. Like, same thing with these greens up here. I need to integrate them somewhere down here. You'll notice your coloring improves if you make sure that colors on one end of the page are used elsewhere. And you'll have less of a mess on your desk. So let's do, actually, instead of sepia, we will do willow and probably bark, but we are going to layer this, and I'm going to show you why. So I'm going to take my willow here, and I'm going to assume my light source would be hitting this side. So I'm going to take willow, and kind of using medium pressure because I want a lot of pigment there, and then I'm just kind of stopping halfway. That's because we're going to drag it across. Now you get a better effect dragging with a water brush versus an alcohol marker, because the water dilutes it as it drags it, whereas the alcohol marker soaks up the pigment into that tip. So you want to keep that in mind. But it's, like I said, instead of fiddling with a water medium at the moment, let's just focus on learning how to put down these colors, and then we can worry about practicing with a water brush. So that was willow. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my alcohol marker and drag it. Yes, I do have to turn my page. My wrist appreciates it. So I'm basically just dragging from the dark side to the side with no color. See, just like that. And then again, always remember with alcohol marker, things look a little funky. Just make sure you're getting this color dissolved in here. You're not leaving any pencil strokes. And the best way to do that is, so after we go through and drag this across and it dries, you can actually look at it. And if you see some pencil strokes still there, go over it again. Wait till it dries though, but try to just drag in one direction so that the color does look like it's fading off. And see how you can see the highlight we've naturally already created. Clean off my brush. Okay, so we're gonna let that dry for a minute before we go in and add more. The nice thing is with alcohol markers, these dry way faster than water medium, and I have no page buckling, so I can use this super flimsy paper and I'm not going to get any buckling. So, you know, there's a lot to be said about the alcohol marker. And this is a beginner tutorial, but you can use the alcohol marker and make killer pages with just the alcohol marker. So don't think you have to use a water brush. Okay, so I think that must be part of the building there. You know what, let's do the tin roof. I'm gonna say this is a tin roof. I'm gonna make it blue because we already have blue here in our little flag. So let's see, the original blues we had were iron blue and deep blue. But instead of deep blue, I'm gonna use my iron blue and my iris blue. So let me grab iris. Iris is just a little bit lighter. And that will help because iron blue is gonna be our shadow color. So I'm going to start with our iron blue here at the top. Again, iron blue is the dark shadow color. Just gonna bring that across. I mean, this could technically not be like an aluminum roof, but that's just kind of, when I was growing up in California, the rooftops were always made of like aluminum. So it's just kind of what I picture on all beach houses. You know, they're made of like dilapidated sea-aged wood and then just have like these aluminum roofs. So you'll notice I'm going under here where each of the aluminum thingies overlap one another. And that's because obviously there would be a shadow where these bad boys overlap. And same thing under this sign. I'm just gonna keep that going. And then we'll want some under the little, I guess the pitch of the roof. Whatever that is. I'm not a roofer. I don't know. There's a term, but I don't know it. So we'll put that in there. Keep that going. I'm actually really excited to do this with you guys. I've been meaning to do more Inktense tutorials, and I just haven't gotten around to it. And I feel Inktense is a lot more intimidating than it should be. They are so fun. You can finish a picture so much quicker with Inktense once you get it down. I'm gonna put some down here because it just looks like that. Okay. Now take your iris blue, and for this one, we're just going to lightly pull this across. I am going to leave a little white space in the center. I'm kind of lightly going there, and that's where those two will meet. Now for the rest of these, we're going to do a really light layer of the iris because we will be going back in with our iron blue. It's hard to keep those straight. We'll be going back in with our iron blue to add more depth later. But for now, we kind of need our base coat. So I'm going to make it a little bit heavier in some of these shadow areas. And again, you can do this however you want as well. Like, you don't have to copy me word for word here, or I should say pencil for pencil. And you also don't even have to color along with me. You can use these combos and techniques and tackle your own page. Find a summary page that has similar elements, or it could be totally different. But you can use the same color combos for your leaves and the technique. The whole point of color alongs to me is just to learn the technique. Sometimes I don't have the book the colorist is using, but I still want to see how they've used that medium so that if I ever get that medium or that book, I kind of have somewhere to go. At least that's how I look at it. Okay. We'll test this out real quick, see how I like it. I'm still using my Artify. Gonna use it till it dies on me. So I'm just going to take this very gently because I don't want to go out of the line, and I'm just going to start dragging it across. Same thing here. You won't get as long of a drag as you would with water. That's because we're using marker. Okay, now up top, remember we have the shadow area underneath. So I want to make sure I activate that and then pull down. And you'll notice I'm only pulling halfway, but that's because the color from the bottom, I'm going to pull and meet at the top. So see how I'm doing that to create some white space, which will be our natural highlight space. Okay, and we're just going to keep repeating this. And seriously, you can be as sloppy as you want here. Just try not to drag your color onto an element that you don't want blue. Like this beach sign is really up in the way. At the same time, I want to make sure I'm activating my shadow underneath. So you might have to go back and see, pull it a little. Just make sure you're activating everything because these pencils will betray you if you leave anything unactivated. Can't tell you how many times I'll be like, oh, I got it all, and then I went to layer over it and I missed some pencil and oh, I made some gorgeous mud, but I didn't really want mud colors. Okay, so I'm pulling there and there and just pulling back up. Okay, clean off my brush nib just so I don't forget. So you see how we've already created a natural highlight just by doing that, and it was one color. I mean, yeah, we have our shadow color, but on the tin roof here, we just did one color. So let's get our iris blue, and then the same thing. Just add some color. Bring it down as far or as little as you want. All right. I really want to get those graphitint pencils so that I can practice this with those. They are a water-soluble pencil. I really want to try those Spectrum Noir ones that you can actually erase even after you've activated them. That is just nuts because like graphitint, once it's down, it's down. And so supposedly these Spectrum Noir ones, you make a boo-boo and you can just erase it even after you've activated it. And I mean, talk about the ultimate friendly pencil, you know, for beginners. So I really want to give those a go. They're not as easy to get in the US though, as with all Spectrum Noir products. Let's be real. Like I want to get the Spectrum Noir marker paper, and you can buy it on Amazon US, but it's really overpriced on Amazon US. I'm thinking of just like putting aside a bunch of money and then making like a huge Cult Pens order or something to justify it all. Okay. I'm just going to do a light amount down here so that I have something to blend upward. Okay. And so one thing I wanted to show you is see how you can still see some lines here? That's because my pencil didn't activate all the way. So you just go back over it and you can smooth out those lines. The one cool thing about using alcohol markers is you can actually hold your, definition. So if I make veins in a leaf, I can hold them, whereas with a water brush, I usually have to go back in, get a more concentrated color on my brush, and then go back in and manually add those veins. Whereas with the alcohol marker method, you're not saturating it with so much water, so it holds pretty well. These ones behind, I'm just kind of blending as is. Okay, we got some over here. Remember, we do have that shadow color, so I want to make sure I activate that. And bring those up. Activate that one, bring those up. Trying to keep my hand away from rubbing against the alcohol marker. So again, we do have this shadow line in here, and if it helps you, you can just go in and wet that first before you start pulling around. Now moving up. Okay. Just keep pulling. Just getting that dark blue from the bottom there so I don't accidentally drag it. You do want a juicy marker, so if your marker is like on its last leg and losing ink, swap it with one that has ink or refill it. Yes, you can buy colorless blender refills, depending on the brand, of course, because you do need it pretty wet. Otherwise, once it's dry, it's just going to sit there and streak on your paper. Okay. Oh, let's clear that off. All right, we're gonna wait a minute for this to all dry. Like you can see this panel here has fully dried up, and so you can actually see the full effect. See how these look kind of muddled because they're still wet. What I am going to do now is I'm going to take my iron blue on that panel, and then just from the top, and only the top, kind of gonna follow the lines the artist gave me for shadow, but I do want those a little darker because these overlap one another. So obviously the tops of these will have shadow while the bottom would not have as much shadow. So I'm just gonna go through, kind of just add it here and there. You don't have to think too much about it. Now put this down lightly because this is a dark color and it will be dark when you activate it. And I might even want to deepen underneath just to emphasize. I might add some in here just because it's obviously going to be darker if it's behind a sign. All right, and then same thing here. But see, you can already tell we've created a bunch of shadow and depth, and all we used were 2 colors and an alcohol marker. So, and again, you can do this with water. I like the alcohol markers, especially if you're new. I feel it's just so much more control. And you don't have buckling, and like I said, the finish of the ink itself is very smooth. So like, it's not just rough like it is with a water brush. Okay, so I'll take my marker and I'm just going to very gently activate that darker color where we put it and just pull it down a little. And when I'm using my marker, I am not using heavy pressure. I'm not pushing hard at all. I'm just lightly touching the color enough to get it wet, because obviously it needs to be wet to do its job. And then that's it. I'm not pressing hard. So this is actually really easy on your hands. So if you have a lot of problems with like arthritis or anything like that, but you love to shade and layer, I would honestly say this method with Inktense and using the brush too would really help your hands a lot. Okay, can't remember if I activated that part. All right, let's just keep that moving. I don't think I did. Yeah, we're just pulling this dark color down a smidge. All right, wipe off my alcohol marker till it's clear. Oh, and one thing that I should have probably mentioned, your scratch paper where you clean off your marker, either use marker paper or very smooth cardstock. Do not use printer paper or watercolor paper or anything that's going to suck the ink out of here. While it would clean it faster, it also will basically deplete your ink. So I use a very smooth, this is Nina 110 pound, and that is like my go-to when I'm doing that type of thing. Okay, so we have our tin roof. Let's see, how are we on time? Like I said, this whole tutorial is going to be very short. I'm trying to keep them short and sweet, and then, you know, you guys can jump on, color a little with me, and go from there. So, you know what, how about I teach you wood grain, because I can show you how we'll do the wood grain here, and then our coloring homework will be to finish the rest of the building only. Don't worry about this woodwork yet. Building only in the wood. So again, I'm going to use willow. That will be a repeating one. Oh, and we do need to darken up these, which we'll do later. Let's see, willow. Oak is still a good one for the wood grain. So let's grab oak. And then let's grab bark. Bark is very dark with water, but it's not as scary outside of water. But let's try those first. Okay. So with this one, I'm not going to layer as much. I'm just going to put them down. So I'm going to show you how to do the planks on this side. And then I want you guys off camera to do these wooden planks throughout here. Ignore the windows and the door and menu and all that. Just focus on the planks. So with bark, which is number 2000, I'm going to start up here. And this is going to be our shadow color. So immediately I'm going to put it where the planks meet, because there's always a shadow where planks get nailed together. All right. Then I'll color in some of these knots. I'll definitely add some shadow in there just because it's, well, there. And then I'm going to add a little shadow below that because obviously there's going to be a shadow on the wall. All right. Now, this is the fun part with wood grain. Just put the color down and don't think about it. Move it in zigzags. Wood grain is natural. It's not a straight line. It moves around. It can be a little funky. Like, just let it move. All right, I'm taking my willow. Same thing. I'm just kind of putting it randomly in some places. Here I overlap. Oops, got some on my... Like I said, you can always erase when it's dry, not so much once it's been activated. That's what whiteout is for, or Posca. So just make your lines as messy as possible. Try not to think about it too much. Otherwise, it'll look like you thought about it too much. Okay, now I'm going to take my oak and then just same thing. Kind of just drag it about. Let's Good place there. Also keep in mind, you can leave some white space. We're gonna be dragging color, so it's not a big deal. With my bark, bark. I'm just gonna add shadow up here because obviously, well, it sits under this little tin rooftop, it'll be darker. Okay, so see, I have some white space there. It's not a big deal, I promise. Okay, with our marker, first thing I want to do is I want to go in and define the shadows. So I'm very gently going over those little cracks in the plank where I know I have my dark color. And then same thing up here. I'm just gently pulling that out because I want to make sure, one, it's activated, but two, I don't forget it. Okay, clean off your brush a little. Now here is how I do this. I just pull down and keep pulling down. And the reason for that, occasionally, like if you have a small area that's harder, you can pull up, but very gently, like a light flicking motion. The reason I'm pulling down in one direction is if you sit there and go like this, you're going to muddle all your colors together and they won't blend into a natural wood tone. Whereas what I'm doing right now, they're naturally blending together. See that? And it's okay if you have color on your alcohol marker. Unlike a water brush where you have to kind of rinse it a whole bunch, this doesn't transfer as much as you would think. There, see? Wood grain. Now I'll show you what happens if you were to take those colors and, you know, move your marker back and forth. So let's take those same colors. I'm just doing something really like haphazard here at the moment, but just to prove a point. So I got those in there, and then I even have some white space like we left. Now, if I were to take my marker and just go back and forth like that, I've lost my definition and it looks kind of muddy. Whereas here, I still have all my definition. It might be hard to see on camera, but I've really washed out the wood grain. See, that's all blended together. This does lighten the color of your Inktense, whereas see here, the colors are a lot richer. So you need to keep that in mind. If you're going back and forth, you're going to drown out the color. You're going to blend everything, but you're not going to have the same effect. So, and it looks even worse once it fully evaporates. But so see here how we've created and kept like the definition of our wood grain. It's actually still a little wet on this paper. But what I could do is like say I feel like something needs to be a little darker. That's where you can go back later. So say I want this here to be a teensy darker. I'm taking my bark, adding it in. Oh my goodness, the lid on this one. And then I'm just going over that bark where I added it to create some more depth. So you can totally do that. Wow, bark is really hard to get off your marker. As after you put your colors down and, you know, as you go through and keep coloring, you'll definitely want to keep that in mind. Hey, do I want some more willow in here? You know, you can splash some willow in, activate it. Just remember to move in one direction. So let me zoom you out just a teensy so you can see everything. Okay, so your coloring homework, as I like to call it, will be finishing this set of planks here, this whole set here of planks, and that is it. Don't worry about down here. I want to do the deck and stairs using slightly lighter colors. And then also make sure you don't color in like any of these. These are going to be different. We'll address the window together. But yeah, just remember, like, you would have a shadow under here for sure. You'll have shadows in between each plank. You would have shadows along the door jamb because obviously that's creating a shadow. But you can tell even as this is drying up, it looks really pretty. And it's just 3 colors. So yep, that is our homework for this next one. And then I will see you guys very soon for part 3, where we'll keep working on this. We'll go back and add our shadow. But even here you can see with just one color, how if you put it here and drag it across, it naturally creates a highlight. And it was just one color. So you can totally do this with one color and save yourself a lot of hassle. A lot of my first Inktense pages were with a single color and that was it. But yeah, thank you for hanging out with me. Just remember, your wood grain colors are Willow 1900, Oak 1730, and Bark 2000. And I can't wait to get going on the next round.